Okay, the general next objective I have is to move from macros to explaining user-defined functions to dramatic things user-defined functions could do is number one, if you have this goal seek, you can make this goal seek fully automatic. That's one thing we can do. Second thing we can do is fix kind of the real problems that you have with this copy and paste macro. Now over here, I put, this you'd have to really kind of watch the last video a little bit. Not much, but just we've got a sources and uses, and we've got some fees that depend on the debt, but the debt depends on the fees. So we have this classic simple circular reference, and if we use a copy and paste and we change the fees up here and we change the gearing over here and we make a data table, Alt D T I guess, and we make the column width the column input rather the debt, and oops, that was the row input, that was the fees, and the column is the gearing, and then we put these together, and what happened is, okay, can do this, and then where if I press Shift F9, I can't do that because I've got this silly old video on, but I can go to formulas and compute that, and here's the problem, that Shift Control C, that's a little macro. It's a little formatting macro, not exactly the same as Shift Control 1 and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't change. When we change the fees, nothing changed. Oh, no. Okay, and that's because how would the data table know to do that? Now I've made other videos where I showed you how to redo the data table with VBA, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That doesn't work. Now, the other thing that might not work so well is if we go down here and we made this copy and paste macro, right now it's got a little difference. In fact, what I'll do is put a check. And I think when you put a check, why wouldn't you just put equal round this, and then let's go to 4 decimals, maybe equal 0. Sometimes it might not exactly be 0, although the way we did it, it was exactly 0. We didn't put a test in there. And then if we now do our copy and paste, we'll get it true. But then, right now, let's put a different target debt in. Let's put 800 as our target debt, and then we do the goal seek, and then the copy and paste doesn't work. So we'd have to do the copy and paste, then the goal seek doesn't work. And then you'd have to do it back and forth and back and forth. Now that's really easy to do. There's no big deal. If you have these two macros, you can up. What you can do is go to the copy paste, assign a macro, press edit, and you can take that copy paste, and let's make it copy paste 2. Something like this. Don't forget to change the name. And this time up here we had the goal seek. And the goal seek has a bracket and all that. You don't have to press call. All you have to do is go down here. And every time you're doing it, maybe before we do the diff, we'll put goal seek. Okay, so that's not that big a deal, but you would have to you would have to make a copy paste macro and all of that. So let's make this 900, and let's make this one 1200. Okay, and we right click and go to assign macro, and this time assign it to copy and paste 2. And we do that, and it takes a little longer, but it does it fine. Okay. Big models, in a big model, that might be a really painful thing to do. I've seen it where it could be incredibly painful, but worse yet, if you've got a really simple model, this data table still did not work. Okay, so instead of doing this, we're going to show you how to solve this problem with this user-defined function. Now, my philosophy on this is that in some cases, if you have got one debt issue, if you're mainly worried about the funding, if you're not doing too much with sculpting, you can write your own user-defined function fairly easily. If you've got bigger problems, then I've shown you this method, which is kind of, we're trying to get it a lot, Eddie and I are trying to get a lot easier, but we can put it into these big monster models, okay? Now, a user-defined function is like a sum function, okay? If I wanted to put equals sum, of course, well, that's kind of silly. Why in the heck did I even waste your time on that? Okay, I could get that. Now, if we just make a function. Now, there are a few rules with making these functions, and the big advantage of making a function is there's no button, and everything's back to automatic. The goal seek's automatic, the data table's automatic, everything's back to normal. That's the good news. The bad news is it takes a little bit more programming, and there are a couple of little painful things with a user-defined function, and maybe I should say more than a little. And this frustration you have about the stupid advanced VBA code is understandable. Okay, so there's a little bit of a trade-off. Now, the first one we'll do is let's make a user-defined function to say hello in Java. How's that? Because now we can press alternate and then F11 to get back our macros and all that. And this time, instead of making a sub, you put function. And I'll put, I hope, Guten Tag. I don't know if that's how you spell it. I'm learning it because my parents used to speak it, okay? And I'm too old to learn a language, but I'm trying not to go completely senile. Now, when you have a function like this, okay, when you have this, what you need to do is take the name of the function and you can just define it as anything. It could be a number or a letter. Okay, I don't know if you would capitalize this or not. Who knows? That's the first rule. Now, the second rule of something you cannot ever do, you could not say Guten Tag equals range A1. The ranges, you cannot pick any ranges from Excel. That's the hard part. Okay, instead of getting something from Excel, you have to get it inside these brackets. And that, when you have a more complicated and more complicated thing, that starts to be the real painful part of it. So we just put here equal Guten Tag, and we didn't put anything in, and it puts the output. That's a range name. No button, nothing else. Okay, number one. Number two, let's say, this is a ridiculous thing to do. Let's say I just want to always divide by 1,000. Of course, you could put, it's not hard, in Excel to go like this and divide by 1,000. You'd, of course, do that, but who knows why? There may be some auditors want to do this or something. Show you like that. Press alternate F11 again, and this time put function. Now, I did this wrong. It's not funny. I put div 1,000 or something, and it didn't work. But if I put div like this, okay, and now we're going to do one little more thing. We're going to read in a variable, and we can put read in whatever, okay. And we got to be a little bit careful. If you name it something like IRR, I think, or name it which is an Excel function, or name it as, I don't know, date, it would probably not work. So that's the frustration. I understand you with your frustrations. Okay, and then you can put div 1000 equal, and then you put read in. Now you can do all sorts of fancy things, and then when you do this, put equal. Come on, div 1000. Does it give you that? That's a function you made, and you just put that in, and that's how you read in a variable, not with a range. Now let's do the next part. Now, if you remember, when we made our copy and paste macro, when we made the final version of the copy and paste one, I'm going to take away our little thing here. I should have done that a long time ago. We put a do while. This time we put a goal seek in, and we made a diff with 3 f's for some crazy reason. And this time I'm going to, instead of doing our fixed fees here and copying and pasting and do this, it's kind of just, isn't it a little bit messy? Don't you kind of not like it? Maybe, maybe not. What we're going to do is just put a function that will compute these fees. It'll just be this computed fees. And when we use this computed fees in here, we can do the iteration and not use the iteration button in Excel. Let's show you how that works. Alternate F11 again. And I've shown you this, I think, before, but I'm going to do it a little bit different. See, so we put function fees, and then what I'm going to do is add do another video, 2 or 3 more videos, or maybe 4 more. And when we get more and more and more advanced, the first thing I'm going to do is, or explain, is how you do this with a debt service reserve account. So you don't, which is a little more complicated on the circularity side. Okay, and then we'll put the DSRA plus the fees and everything else in, plus the interest during construction in, and show you those kind of things. Used to take me at least a day, if I want to be honest. Yeah, but now, once you get used to it, if you follow some rules, if you realize the mistakes you can make, I'm going to try to explain this in a much more practical way. Now, if we put function fees, the first thing we have to do is define fees. And then we define fees as the debt times the fee percent. Now, when I did this first, I put a percentage sign, and the damn thing didn't work. I'm sorry to swear. And I'm not going to swear quite so much. And then we don't have the debt, and we put the debt equals, and so what we're doing is we're going backwards. We're finding the item that creates the circular reference, and then working backwards through the Excel. You have to redo all these formulas. You know, there's no range, no nothing. And we put debt equal uses times, and it took me so long. Why can't I put a range name in here? And one time I was able to, for some reason. And we put debt percent. That's how we computed the debt. And we put debt. Debt PCT. Okay. That took too long. And then we're not quite finished. And then we put the uses equal the capex plus the fees. Now, here's the problem. So it's a little bit different. Let's move this crap down at the end. Okay, and put this down here. This is a little bit different than up here. All we needed up here was to copy this from fixed to this. But you know what we can do is we could copy this and put our do while. Now, the reason we need a do while is and whenever you'd have a do while, it's kind of good, a little bit better form to invent it a little, because we have the fees up here. And we have the fees up here. And we've got to go around and around. And then we can put, here's what I do. I would put last fee equal fees. Now, the very first time it doesn't know what they are, but then it went down and it computed the fees here, and it puts it back up here, and then you're recomputing it, and you put I didn't want to do that, and you put DIFFF equal, there's no reason to put all those F's in, by the way, is last fees minus fees. It doesn't matter which way you go. And then you put not WEND, loop. Okay, and that's it. Now that last part was a little bit confusing when I kind of said, well, because it took me like years, if you want to know. We can't have a difference of 0, so you've got to assign it to something. The last fees is 0. You compute the fees at something other than 0, so you've got a diff. You go around and around until you're finished. Now, once you have, now the other thing I didn't do is this CapEx up here. We need to read that in because we can't use the range names. Okay. Now this is more advanced. If you can look at it and not get too intimidated and see the analogy between this and this, maybe it would be okay. Because then you put in your fixed fees right here, you put fees. Now when you do that, it doesn't have the nice little thing where Excel tells you what to do, but if you press Shift and F3, then it tells you what to do, and you go up and get the fee percentage. And this time I'm going to press an F4. And then I'm going to get the debt percentage. And I'm going to go up and press an F4. Oh, I don't have to. I've got a range name. And then with the CapEx, I'm not going to press the F4. And I'm going to press Enter. And it gave me a little answer here. Okay. And I did something wrong, and just a minute, which is kind of typical. Okay, I had made a mistake, but this was very, very interesting. The mistake was not in it was in the copy and paste macro, not in the user-defined function. It had nothing to do really with this. When I tested it out, I said, no. You know what you could do is if you see a for next loop in a macro, don't be intimidated. It just goes around and around 10 times. So if this thing is kind of a bad way to do it. In here, I put fees and I put debt, and then it's equal. The mistake I had made was this computed fees was computed on the equity instead of the debt. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, so when we correct this with that little thing, now if I press, I can't do that. I've got to go over to the formulas and click on this thing to recalculate. Now it gives a different answer, right? Yeah, okay. And if the fees go up to 30%, then again I have to press this thing. Because you can see that we're getting the effect of everything. Okay, now let's do it right and close the video, and then we're going to go and do this for a more complicated item. Notice it, by the way, it doesn't say the user-defined function. Sorry for scratching my stupid. Okay, and then we put up here, instead of just going around and around, we do it a lot more elegantly. I'll put diff equal 999, do while diff not equal to 0. Then we put diff equal last fee minus fees. You have to spell everything exactly correctly, and you put last fee equal fees. Okay, don't forget the S's, and then down here instead of the next you put a loop. Okay, it's painful, I did it wrong, and you can practice it and all that. And then you can now, where are we? Okay, hopefully it's still okay. If you press F2, you can make sure it's okay. And the difference is 0, and you can change anything you'd like. And you can run a goal seek, a data what if analysis, a goal seek, and let's make the difference up here be 0 by changing the, what were we changing that gearing up here? Okay, so that's what you can do, and it actually, if you can't see it in this example, but it'll run much faster than the copy and paste. At least I think it will. Testing it is tricky. And now we're going to move to more real world and more complicated examples. And so that's the next one. I hope that you're getting a few ideas about macros and loops and other things. Now, when you look at other people's macros, sometimes they make the variables really short and they make them difficult to kind of read. So I have a different style, which is a very old-fashioned style, I guess. And enough of babbling.